Carita Parks with Bowie TV. It's another day of training camp at the Under Armour Performance Center. It was a pretty standard day of practice, but there are a couple things that I do want to note. First and foremost, coming off the injury list today was Rashad Bateman. He returned to practice. It was a little bit of a short practice for him. He did not stay involved the entire practice. He left pretty early on. Afterwards, Coach Harbaugh said that he's still trying to work his way in and that there's typically a ramp-up plan when guys are coming off of an injury, and his midsection has been bothering him off and on during camp. Also, good news on the defensive side of the ball. TJ Tampa, who was on the physically unable to perform list, he was at practice today. He's still not a full participant, but once again, they're easing him back in. And then yesterday, there was a scare with Kyle Hamilton, who hurt his leg. He was not in practice, but he was on a side field moving around. So clearly it's not as bad as everyone thought. Coach Harbaugh said it's more of a sprain. So we'll see how that comes along, because we know how important Kyle Hamilton is to that secondary. In addition to that, a couple of guys who stood out today. I did feel like wide receiver Anthony Miller, who was signed last week, had some really nice plays today. He had a reception from Lamar Jackson that was at least 10 to 15 yards, and the crowd reacted to it, and he was pretty hype afterwards. In addition to that, earlier in practice and one-on-ones, he got some good separation on Daryl Worley and was able to pull that in for a would-be touchdown. So to me, he is someone to keep an eye on. It could be in the mix somehow, especially if wide receiver health does become an issue as we get into the season. Once again, we talked about Ardarius Washington last week when he had a pick six. Today, he really had a nice leaping pass breakup in coverage on Nelson Aguilar. So he continues to stack some good days. After practice, we had an opportunity to talk to pass rush coach Chuck Smith, and he had a lot of good things to say about many of his guys, but in particular, he got really passionate when talking about Odafe Owe, who he did face some injuries last year, so he's having a great camp, but there are a lot of eyes on how will he perform this season. And Chuck Smith made some really good points about how Odafe just didn't get the snaps that he needed to perform as everyone thinks he should have. He mentioned that Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney were veterans, and so they got more snaps than Owe. And then in addition, he was hurt. But here's more from Chuck Smith.
Now, what he needs to do, first and foremost, he just needs to have those reps. He needs to be on the field and continue to get those reps. He needs to continue to do as he's doing now, playing fast, executing his moves and things like that. And, if he gets those 5 games and those other arguably 400 or 500 reps, he's a double-digit sacker.
In addition to Chuck Smith, we also had an opportunity to talk to Kyle Van Noy afterwards. And something that happened in practice today that I think connects a little bit to what Van Noy was saying about Lamar Jackson is on a play when Lamar threw a pass to Isaiah Likely, it was broken up by Marcus Williams. Lamar clearly thought that Williams should have been penalized. So he was looking at the iPad and he went over to the referees. He went to 2 referees and he was pleading his case, whatever that may be. We don't know what the outcome of that conversation was, but it was Lamar Jackson taking a leadership role. And Kyle Van Noy basically alluded to how Lamar Jackson has stepped up even more in that way and how he is communicating. Here's what Van Noy had to say.
His leadership skills being off the field is grown, and then his leadership skills on the field is grown. Just wanting something done precisely and going and communicating that.
This is Carita Parks with your Ravens Rundown. Be sure to stay tuned to Bowie TV Sports for all of your Ravens content.